Hi guys, welcome to our cookie class, Talk About a Good Time. Thank you so much for signing up. I hope you enjoy the class. Just want to let you know a little bit about what's in your box, so I'll take this out with you. You want to make sure that your box is taken out about 15 minutes or so before class, but we've got our icing right here, our cookies. Our featured flavor this month is churro sugar cookie, one of my all-time faves. A little tub of powdered sugar, some food coloring, and some sanding sugar. And then lastly, there's this little packet here. It's got our practice sheet, some extra piping bags in case you cut your hole too big, a photo of the class, spoon, paintbrush, scribe tool, and fork, and I'll let you know what we're going to do with all of that. But I want you to start taking everything out of your box and setting it out in front of you. You're going to put your picture and your practice sheet right in front of you, and then meet me back here. Now that I have everything out in front of me, I just want to remind you, you want to have a paper towel close by and a pair of scissors. Once everything is opened up, you're going to start giving your bags a massage, just like this. So also, if you notice, your bag has a bit of plastic on the top. I like to cut that off. It's optional, but if you decide to cut that off, don't cut too close to the tape. You want to leave about 2 inches from the tape. So I'm just cutting that off, and I'm going to massage my bag. I'm going to turn the camera around so that you can see I have everything out and ready. We're going to practice on this practice sheet. Just a little bit of a rundown of the class. We're going to practice first, and then I'm going to show you step by step how to outline your cookies and how to fill them in. What's lovely about doing this online is that you can really take your time on these, pause the video, rewind, fast forward, whatever you want to do, but that's what I love about the online class. We're going to practice with our red icing. So once you're ready, you're going to take your red and you're going to cut a tiny hole. It's always better to cut your hole smaller than you think you need, because you can always cut more, but you can't take it back. And even when you're cutting a small hole, it's very deceiving. It looks thicker, or it comes out thicker than you're expecting. So I always cut teeny tiny. My goal is to get my red icing as thick as this black line here. So there is a very particular way that I like to cut my bag. And before I do that, I just want to say, if you want your cookies to look like this, I highly recommend that you watch every step completely before doing what I'm showing. So I know it's going to be very tempting to already cut your bag while I'm doing it, but I want you to just watch and then you guys can go for it. So my seam is facing up and it's centered. If I cut my bag and the seam was on the side, that seam will get in the way and curl my icing. So I hold it up, I center it, I flatten my tip, and I'm going to cut the tiniest hole straight across. Tiny. Whenever I cut my hole, I squeeze a little bit of icing onto my paper towel. Now, if you're doing your lines and you notice there's black underneath, that means your hole is too small, and to cut your hole bigger, you're going to do the same exact thing where the seam is facing up and centered, and then reflatten the tip. The way that I hold my bag is I pinch the tape with my thumb and my pointer finger, and then I roll the pod so it's nice and tight. I rest that pod in my hand, and I'm going to squeeze with these 3 fingers. I like to hold my wrist steady, and then I start by touching my tip on the paper, gently squeeze, lift up, and I'm just letting the icing fall. I'm about 1 inch above the paper, so I'm not close to the paper, I'm not dragging it. But because I'm lifted, I want to unsqueeze early, and then I lay the rest down. So let me show you up close real quick how high I hold my tip. So I start by touching my tip right here on the paper, I squeeze, and I lift about 1 inch high. Just let that line fall, unsqueeze, release the pressure, lay it down, just like that. If your line is breaking, that means you're not squeezing hard enough. If it's squiggly, either your hole is too small or you're squeezing too hard. So I want you to pause this and go ahead and just start with the lines, and then meet me back here. All right, once you're done with your lines, you're going to do your swirls, your waves, and your swirls. So just like before, I always touch first, then I squeeze, I lift. Now I'm squeezing just a little bit softer on the piping bag, and I'm looking a little bit ahead of where I want the icing to fall, and when I'm ready to stop, I unsqueeze, lay it down, touch the paper. I forgot to mention that you want to keep your tip clean, so I'm often just giving it a little swipe here and there. So touch, squeeze, lift. Again, looking ahead, taking my time and squeezing just hard enough for that line to not break. Release the pressure and touch. For the circle, what you want to do here is just squeeze slightly softer on the bag. Really take your time. I'm looking at the black line below, at where I want that icing to fall. I'm watching it fall, squeezing enough for that line to not break, remembering to breathe. My hole could be a touch thicker, but I'm going to leave it like this. Release the pressure and touch. And then the last thing, this is the most important part, is every point or edge or corner of your cookie, point or corner, you want to put your tip down. So I have a starting point, I touch, I squeeze, I lift, and then when I get down to the bottom, I touch my tip, okay? Then I start where I left off and I lift up again. And this is how I get nice, sharp points, clean corners. There we go. If you find that your line is curling, you might need to cut your hole bigger. So I'm going to go ahead and just fold this in half. You guys can finish up your practice sheet and then meet me back here and we'll start our cookies. All right, we're going to go ahead and start with our chip bowl. So we have two different kinds of bowls. We have our guac bowl and our chip bowl. The chip bowl has pointy chips, so just make sure you're outlining the right one. The reason I like to outline my cookies is because it helps prevent the icing from spilling over the edge. I'm just going to show you here on one cookie, but you guys are going to outline both. And I like to outline one full cookie before moving on to my next cookie. So with our tan color, we're going to go ahead and cut a small hole. This is a little bit of a thinner consistency than what we practiced with. So you want to cut a little bit smaller than before. And remember, have that seam facing up. That's really important. And we're going to outline the bowl first, okay? So I'm just going to scooch one out of the way. Let's see if I can zoom in. Yes, I can. So I start, if you look at the bowl, there is, or the cookie, there's two little points on the side, and that's my guide where our line for the chip bowl is. So I start by touching my tip right on that point, and just a gentle curve across to the other side, and then I touch again. Then I'm going to outline, and I like to go as close to the edge of the cookie as I can go, all the way around. Oh no, I just messed up. You guys, if you mess up, you have a little scribe tool in your pack. You're just gonna carefully wipe it off. You don't have to wipe the whole cookie off, but make sure you keep that pick clean. We don't want crusties on there. So you'll just go back to where you were at. So bowl first, then the feet. So I lift, I touch, I lift, touch, and lift and touch. Remember, every point you touch your tip to the cookie. And then we're going to outline the chip. So it's really important that you massage this yellow. It's looser, again, than the red that you practiced with, just until you get a feel of the flow of the icing. But now we're going to go ahead and do our chips, and I want to make sure you're listening and watching, because it doesn't look like chips yet. The cookie doesn't look like chips, but there's a very particular way that I like to outline this. So I'm going to start with the two outside chips, and I like to have the photo next to me just kind of as a guide, but I'll start right here at this side. I touch, I lift, and I go around and touch. Then I'll do the other outside. So it's outside, outside. This is a little curve right here, and then I touch. So I have the two outside ones. Now I'm going to do the middle chip. So I'm using the shape of the cookie as my guide. So here's the outside chip. And touch, and then one more right here. Okay, ideally you want your outline to crust about a minute before filling it in. So by the time you're done outlining your second cookie, your first cookie should probably be dry enough for you to fill it in. So if you look at the photo, there's some creases on the cookie, some little separation of the chips. And the way that I achieve that is by flooding them all at different times. If I flooded all of these spaces, it would just be a blob. But we're gonna go ahead and only fill in the center. So when I fill this in, I'm almost touching my tip on the cookie, and then I squeeze. So I'm very close to the cookie. You really wanna hold the tape nice and tight. And as I squeeze the bag, I'm kind of jiggling my tip in there to push the icing where I want it to go. So I jiggle, 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 and then fill that in. Nice and puffy. You want to make sure icing isn't spilling over the edge. If it is, it's a very quick fix. You would just wipe it off with your scribe. However, if you go on to your next cookie and you don't find that out till later and you go to wipe it off, it's going to crack your surface, your crusted surface. So you're going to outline both chip bowls and only fill in the middle, and then also I want you to outline and fill in your guacamole bowl. So in about 1 minute, you guys can go ahead and do all of that. So I'm going to take my black and outline my tip touches. I lift going across the other side. All the way around. Lift, touch, lift, touch, lift, touch. All the way around the cookie. And if you need to, you can cut your hole like a touch more before filling it in. I don't want you to do too much because we need this for our details, but I'm really, really gonna hold that tape closed, twist the bag, and I want you to see how I fill in this big, larger cookie. But I make sure that I'm close to the cookie. If I wasn't holding my tip close, I wouldn't be able to direct where that icing goes. This is a little bit thicker than our other colors because we're using it for details, so it's going to take a little bit more effort for you to flood this and smooth it out. But my biggest advice is just to really fill her up. Make sure you're not leaving any holes. So I'm just going all the way around, making sure there's no holes. And then once I've got that filled in, I'm going to you can hold your scribe like a pencil, kind of jiggle the surface, or you can stab and shake it. Now, if you're having to spread icing around to fill holes, that usually means you didn't add enough icing. So you don't want to have to do much spreading around with your scribe tool. This is for you to smooth it out. So I stabbed the cookie, gave it a shake. I have a little peak here, so I'm going to just gently touch the surface and kind of erase that. So once you're at this spot, if you have a table fan, you can set all 4 of these cookies in front of that table fan. Otherwise, just let those dry. If you have maybe a piece of paper, you can fan that. That would also be helpful just to speed up the crusting process. So go ahead and start that, and then meet me back here once you're caught up to this point. One of the reasons I like to use a fan is because it also, if you notice on the chip bowl, the chips are very, I guess you could say, small spaces, and you're using loose icing to fill it in, and you'll get craters if you don't quick dry them. So that's another reason why either a fan or fanning them helps. While those are crusting, which crusting only takes about 3 minutes or so, you're going to start your margarita glass. So my seam is centered, flatten the tip again, small hole, and we're gonna outline and flood our margarita. This one is my favorite one to decorate. So what I'm doing is I'm gonna start with my green. I start by touching my tip right here, about a ½ inch in the cookie. Then I'm gonna go up, down, back up, and touch. So just like a little wave. And then I'm going to outline this curve right here, and instead of stopping in that corner, I'm actually gonna go in the cookie. I find sometimes when I stop abruptly in these little corners, I can't get a nice curve. So what I do is I go in the cookie, and that's all gonna be covered with icing anyway, so it's not a big deal. And then I'm going to outline this one. This is with our green, all the way around and touch. Then I'm going to take my white icing and outline the rest. So I'll start up here. I'm going to connect the sides. So I lift, I touch, lifting, going all the way across, touch, and touch. And then lastly, I'm going to do the stem of the glass. Again, this is with our white. I like to start at the bottom, and I touch and lift, and I do, again, go in the cookie. So touch, lift, go in the cookie, and then I'm holding my tip close here. You don't need to lift up too much since it's such a small area. And then lastly, I'm going to just flood across. Once you're done with that, you shouldn't need to cut this green hole bigger. We need it to stay small for our taco cookie. However, if you do need to cut it bigger, to rebag your cookie, you're just going to go ahead and take one of those extra bags that you have, cut a hole out of your old bag and squeeze the icing into the new bag and just tie a knot at the top. So it's very simple to rebag your icing if you need to. So I'm just going to fill this in nice and puffy. Again, not leaving any holes, staying close to the cookie but not quite touching the cookie. Fill that in. It looks ugly right now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to stab, gently stab, give it a little baby shake. You can kind of jiggle the surface with the point of your scribe tool. Don't forget to check for spillage. So once that is done, you can actually go back to your chip cookie and fill in the two here. So this one right here, the two sides, and this one right here. So if you need to, go ahead and rewind this for you to see that outline of the margarita again. Once both margaritas are outlined, you're going to fill in the green. Then you're going to come over here and fill in two more sections of your chips. So I'll meet you back here when you're done. Now I'm going to show you how to outline your taco as well as fill in a few more things. So this is going to be quite a few steps, but you're going to have a lot of time to work on this. So once your margarita is filled and the second piece of your chips are filled, you're going to come over to your taco. We're going to outline this. And this is my favorite flavor churro. I hope you guys like it. It's my regular vanilla recipe, and I add cake batter emulsion and cinnamon and sugar and cinnamon in the dough, cinnamon sugar on top. It's so yummy. So we're going to go ahead and outline this shell first. So if you kind of look here, there's kind of an indent. And I like to kind of reference the picture as well. That's where the shell starts. So I'm just going to go ahead and touch my tip here, lift up. I'm leaving a border around. And then this cookie's very forgiving, so don't worry if you have too much space up top or anything. You really can't go wrong with this cookie. But I'm just going to go ahead and go all the way around. Once I've gone around, I'm going to add my tomatoes first. And I like to go in this order because it's just the way that I see the shape of the cookie. It just makes sense to me. So right here are two large curves for our tomatoes. So I lift, go around and touch, lift, go around, touch. And there's one more little tomato at this bottom part right here. And touch. And I'm going to take my tan, which is already open. We're going to add our meat. Now, this meat is not rancid. We're being healthy and we're eating ground turkey, okay? So this is our ground turkey. So if I'm looking at these little bumps here on the side, so we'll start on this left side. I lift, touch, touch the tomato right here, lift, touch, lift, touch. And then the last bit of meat goes here, lift, touch, and then I go in the cookie because I want to leave some space for our lettuce. Our green is open as well, and we're gonna lastly do the green. So it's tomato, meat, and then everything else that's left is going to be our lettuce. I wanna make sure that you outline this first before filling in your chip bowl, because we want that small hole to outline our meat. But for our chip bowl, we wanna be able to cut our hole bigger. Before you do that, there's a couple things before you do your chip bowl. You're gonna take back your margarita glass and you're gonna fill in the bottom of this marg. So you don't need to cut your hole bigger here, but it's just a small spot. We wanna get this drying. We're gonna be dipping our cookie and sanding sugar in a little bit to give us that little salty rim on our marg. I wish I could drink margaritas, but they give me massive headaches, so that's out. And then we're going to fill in, this part's really important because next we're gonna splatter. So you wanna get this drying. You're gonna fill in the feet of your guac. This is another small area that could crater, so you wanna fan them or put them in front of a fan. We're gonna also fill in our taco shell. I probably should have done that first, but that's okay. You can cut your yellow hole bigger to fill this in. It's gonna make it a bit easier. Twist that bag. So yeah, cut your yellow bigger at this point once both are outlined. This part likes to spill, so just make sure you're paying extra attention to that. And be careful not to drag your tip in the cookie because you don't want to get any of that cinnamon sugar to come on the surface. So I'm very close, not quite touching. And then lastly, before you pause me, you're going to fill in your chip bowl. So you're gonna have a lot of time. This is gonna take quite a bit of time for you guys to get completely caught up to me. I cut my brown bigger because I did outline my meat, so you don't need a tiny hole anymore for that. And we're just filling this in, not the feet. And you can also fill in that top chip as well. And then once you're caught up, you're gonna meet me back here. Next, I'm going to show you how to start filling in your taco toppings, as well as we're going to do splatter and making our guacamole, which is really fun. But go ahead and give this a pause and go ahead and get caught up to where I am. So once your cookie, your yellow of your cookie has crusted a bit, or your taco shell, you're going to start by filling in the tomatoes. Now our red is thicker than the rest of our colors because we're doing details, so you really want to fill that in. And I like to just slowly move my tip up while I'm gently squeezing to really puff that up. So I'm just squeezing. It's not going to smooth out as easily as everything else, so you just need to jiggle your tip in there while squeezing icing out. You're gonna let that dry and you're gonna go back to it in 3 minutes to fill in the meat, and you'll just keep going back and forth to that cookie. I'm gonna show you how to do your splatter as well as, what else? Your guacamole. So here we go. We've got this white food gel. If I try to splatter it with this thick white food gel, it wouldn't splatter. So I want to loosen it up with water. So you're going to start with just a little bit of water in your cup. You're going to take your paintbrush and just swirl it around. And you want it to be kind of drippy. So I kind of like to put it against the bowl just to make sure it drips. I'm going to do, you want it to look like milk. Would be a good way to describe it. So once that's the loose consistency, we're going to go ahead and take our paintbrush and our little This is a fork, not a spoon. I'm going to hold the fork about 6 inches or so above the cookie, and I'm going to aggressively press the brush, going back and forth, getting closer and closer to the cookie to create that little splatter on our little bowl. So you just want to make sure you start off a little high. Don't be shy. Really, really press down on that brush. So you'll go ahead and do that. And then to make our guacamole, you're going to take this powdered sugar. You're going to cut a bigger hole out of your piping bag, and you're going to squeeze a generous amount of green, not too much in case you don't have more powdered sugar to thicken it up. But I'm just going to stir that up. I like to add a little touch of brown. Just don't add too much brown. You don't want it to look like guac that's been sitting out all day. So I'm just stirring, and you're looking for a thick peak. You don't want it too crazy thick, so it looks like I can add more green to this. I'll add a little more brown. You just don't want it loose. You want it to keep its texture and shape. Squeeze, mix, 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 mix. And then once you're done with that, you're going to, I want it all incorporated. Let's add a little more green. You don't want any white powdered sugar left. We are busy today. Mariah just got here. She's going to help ship our orders, and Kayla's here baking and shipping. So it's busy here at the shop this morning. Once it's a thick peak, you're going to take a scoopful, and you're just going to press that down, and I use the back of the spoon to kind of spread it around, all around the cookie. There's our guac. So I'm just using the tip of the spoon now to kind of just like shape it where I want it to go. Get the sides. You can go over the bowl. And there's our guac. So meet me back here once you're done with that. Now you can go ahead and go to your taco, and you're going to fill in the next topping, which is our beef. We're going to let this crust for like 3 minutes or so. And you could also fill in the bottom of your chip bowl. So this is the guacamole cookie is the first cookie that will be done. And then the next time I have you watch, I'm going to show you how to do all the details on these. We're going to let these crust. Don't forget to go back and add your lettuce after about 3 minutes. And I'll meet you back here to show you our details. My meat has crusted enough, so I'm going to go ahead and fill in the lettuce. My hole is really big. I kind of was aggressive with my cut, so I'm just kind of dragging my tip carefully to fill this in. And you can even fill it in like this, and then use the scribe if you need to spread it out. Now we're going to go ahead and finish these cookies one by one, starting with our margarita. I'm going to take my sanding sugar and just do a little pile here on I have parchment paper down. And I'm going to take my white and just re-outline the white line that I made up top. So I'm just going right on top of it. And I'm going to carefully hold my cookie. I like to kind of go underneath and be careful not to put your finger on the sides, and just, which I just did. Whoop. Okay. And just gently press this sugar onto the cookie, just like that. And we're going to add a little face. Now, some people looked up some faces online, like little cute, simple faces, so you can do whatever you want. But we're going to go ahead and do what's in the picture. I'm going to start with the mustache. So I want you to practice this movement before you commit to your cookie. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch my tip to the cookie, I squeeze, and I'm in that icing, gently squeezing, getting closer and closer to the cookie to create the mustache. So I'll do the other side. I want to make sure that it's not touching the other side to start, because this will spread a little bit. So it's very close to the other side. I don't want them to touch. If you want, you can do one side, let it crust, and do the other side, but you can't really tell that there's a tiny little space there unless you're looking really close. Then I'm going to add the eyes. So I touch my tip, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze until I get the size dot I want. Touch my tip to the cookie, squeeze, 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 release the pressure, and adding eyebrows, just dragging my tip basically on the cookie. He gets little cheeks as well, so I'm just going to add by squeeze, 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 release the pressure, touch, squeeze, release the pressure, then touch. He's so cute. Some people did like little lips on this guy, but that's our second completed cookie. We're going to put this cookie in. We'll go ahead and finish with, or do our chip bowl. So I'm going to add a little dot in the middle with my green. Okay. And then I'm going to take my red, and the same movement as the mustache, you're going to touch your tip, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. I'm making a dot, and now I'm dragging my tip, getting closer and closer to the cookie, slowly releasing the pressure. Squeeze, getting closer and closer to the cookie. We're going to be doing this a lot for our next month's class, so this is good practice for that. And then taking the white, I'm going to do some little dots. Feel free to just really be creative here. Do any design that you want. And our last cookie is going to be our taco, when it's just the face and some sour cream. So I'm going to start with the mustache. So my tip touches, gently squeeze, lift up, go back down, pretty much dragging my tip onto the cookie. Squeeze, lift up, not quite touching that mustache. There's the tiniest amount of space. Little eyes. Little eyebrows. Cheeks. And he's got some sour cream. And I'm just going to add a dot and then drag my tip up to make it look like a little pointy thing of sour cream. Last night at class I put some all over the cookie and it looked strange. Don't do it unless you want it to look interesting. But there's our cookies. They're so cute. And I just want to come on here. So now you're just going to take your time finishing them up. But I just thank you so, so much for supporting my small business and signing up for class. Our next month's class is going to be flowers for spring. So be sure to check that out. But I hope to see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.